Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Passionately Wrong podcast. I'm James, and I'm here together with my friend and co host, Randy. And today we're going to start a new series, which is going to be comparing two things that sound similar, but which actually are more different than people realize. And I thought we would do this in one of the areas that often has me confused when I'm talking to Randy as a civilian, and he's talking about the different military qualifications he's had and the other people that we've had on as guests. So at different times in the past, Randy, you referred to being a special forces soldier, a Green Beret, a Ranger. And I know those are not the same thing, but I don't think I could explain to anyone if they were to ask what is the difference between those things. And let's start with that. Is there a difference between a Green Beret and a Ranger? Is that what we're going to talk about today?
Yes. So you said Special Forces and Green Beret. Those are the same thing. Green Berets are what we wear on our head, and they became famous mostly from the John Wayne movie back in the 60s. And the number one top of the pop bestseller, The Ballad of the Green Berets in 68. But basically, it's the hat we wear. So when people call us Green Berets, we're like, we're Special Forces. We like
So
to
can I
wear.
call
Yeah, there you
myself
go.
the
That's
Gold Beret
exactly.
if I wear this?
You can. Absolutely. James put where's that from? Nepal?
Yes, Nepali hat my daughter brought back. She just did a month there. I like it, actually. I like wearing hats. Not everyone can pull this off.
Yeah, you look like Eddie Murphy from The Golden Child, if anyone remembers that movie.
I thought about that. Do you wear your hat all the time once you become a Green Beret, Randy, or is it just something you only wear on certain occasions?
So the Green Beret is basically for dress uniform. It's we wear it with our dress uniform, but we also wear another hat depending on which dress uniform it is. And then we also wear it for formations or formal events. We can wear it casually as well, but it's not made to be worn. It doesn't stop the sun, obviously, which is the purpose of the patrol cap, the ball cap thing that we wear, which keeps the sun out of our eyes, right? But the Green Beret doesn't do that. And then if you're wearing it in the sun, you get a tan line, and it doesn't really keep the rain off. In fact, it soaks it up most of the time. So it's not super great to wear it all the time. And you don't wear any of that stuff inside. So you only wear it outside. So we wear it for formal events. You will see people wearing them outside, moving from building to building because you don't wear it inside and things like that. But I think most people who can wear a Green Beret would prefer to wear a PC. It's more comfortable. It keeps the sun out of your eyes, keeps the rain out of your eyes, and it's a little bit more useful. And then the Rangers are a completely different unit, and there's some pretty big differences between the two. I was a Ranger for the first 4 years I was in the military, and then I went to the Green Beret course and became a Green Beret for the rest of my career. So we can go into the differences if you'd like, and we can start with one and go into the other.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Please. The first question is, I guess, for me anyway, can anyone become a Green Beret or special is it? Does the special refer to how hard it is to become one or what you do once you are one? And maybe that's a dumb question, but do you have to know when you join the Army that's something you want to do, or can you decide later? And give us some numbers about how many people actually go off and do this.
So I'd say the first question is, can anyone be a Ranger or a Green Beret? And the answer to that be, can anyone be in the NFL? Can someone train and have the intestinal fortitude and the gift of qualifying for the NFL or even a college sport? Can everyone be in a college sport? More people probably can be in a college sport than NFL, obviously. So NFL is probably more Delta Force, but can anyone be on a college team? You have to have some gifts. You have to be physically fit. Can you make yourself more physically fit? Can you train and probably get there even though you're not as gifted as other people? Probably you can. Will you get a scholarship? Maybe not, but you could probably make the team or you can make the bench, right? So I guess the answer to that is anyone can try out, but there are some pretty good percentages that don't pass. And I wouldn't know the exact percentages. I'd say at least 50%, to tell you the truth, in either one of them. You didn't used to be able to become Special Forces Green Beret right from high. But after 9/11, there was a lot of people volunteering and they all wanted to go to war now. And so the Rangers and SEALs were taking people right out of high school, just like they always did. And so is the Air Force PJ program and all these other elite units from the other services. But special forces Green Beret was missing out on manpower because we weren't accepting them straight out of high school. So when I first got into the Green Berets in the early 90s, you had to serve at least 3 years or 4 years in the military, depending on what profession you wanted to go to in the Green Berets. There's multiple professions. And so you had to have that under your belt. So it wasn't even an option when I came to the Army. Now, take that back 10 years. They used to let people come out of high school into Green Berets in the 80s and 70s after Vietnam and stuff. You could do that. And then they decided they wanted more mature people. It's really a rank thing. Now, let's talk about the Rangers. So Ranger mission is assaults, raids, usually behind enemy lines. They jump behind enemy lines or somehow get behind enemy lines and do one of the most famous World War II attacks is the raid on Cabatuan and where they rescued some POWs. And the Rangers were responsible for that. And Rangers have been around for a while and they have a lot of history. And they also they scaled the cliffs at Point the Hook they had these things shooting up ropes with grappling hooks. And then they climbed these knotted ropes while they're getting shot at and took the cliffs. That's a very famous battle that they were in too. So they do the hard stuff. They're like the elite infantry. At one point, they were formed to make the rest of the infantry in the Army more elite. The idea would be to train these guys up in the unit and then disperse them and spread them around the military. These guys would be the perfect soldier. They would be fit. They would have the knowledge and tactics, and they would know everything, and they would be perfect soldiers. You couldn't mess up. You had to be perfect and know everything. And then they would spread them around as team leaders and squad leaders and the rest of the military. That was the objective. But once people got to the Ranger units, they didn't want to leave because they liked being around other elite people. And so it backfired in that way. When I got to the Rangers in 1988, there was a 4-week, I remember a 3-week, but I looked it up right before I was going to talk to you, and it said 4-week. It was a indoctrination program. So they may have changed it. Stuff changes all the time. It's now an 8-week. So who knows what it was when I went through. It was called the Ranger Indoctrination Program. RIP was the way we referred to it and it was just a gut check. For 3 weeks, we do the obstacle course like twice a day. We do calisthenics and march and run until someone quit. And there wasn't a lot of training involved. Like they didn't teach us anything. It was just 3 weeks to see how tough we were. And there was a pretty good amount of people that didn't make it to the end. I'd say over 50%. And then we went to our units. Now there's a couple different things for people who aren't familiar with the military. The Army has a Ranger school, which is not affiliated with the Ranger unit. They're separate entities. The Ranger School has been around for a long time. I don't know how long. And it is a leadership school. It's the premier leadership school of the Army. And lots of other services can go. And it teaches you small unit tactics, basically patrolling, how to conduct raids, how to conduct ambushes, how to conduct recons, how to lead people who are doing raids, ambushes, and reconnaissances. And it teaches you how to lead people who are tired, who are hungry, who have been marching all night, and how to conduct an operation, how to react to different situations. So you're rotated through leadership positions. Go ahead.
How does one get into the Ranger school? I guess there probably are Rangers who go there, but also people who are not Rangers. It's just a leadership school from your description of it.
It's a combat leadership school. So ideally, usually all units that are combat units have allocations. Like you got 82nd Airborne, you have 10 slots for the next course or whatever. So they allocate all these out. If they don't fill them, then people can walk in on the course. If you show up and tell your unit, hey, I want to walk in, and you can wait there and you can get in a wait list or something like that. If people don't finish their allocations, I guess they reallocate them maybe. I don't really know all the ins and outs of the administration of the course, but basically, if you're in a combat unit, your unit has a certain amount of allocations to fill because most infantry units require their officers and to be Ranger tabbed, because you get a tab on your uniform. So everyone in the Army knows that you went to this course and that you hypothetically are a really good leader. You know how to lead people in combat.
All right. So that was different than I was expecting. I've heard you talk with colleagues before about the Ranger tab, and I always thought that meant that you had become a Ranger. But now you're saying no, it's just that you went to this school. What do you get for becoming a Ranger? How do you distinguish yourself there? Is it a similar badge or something you wear, or how does someone know that you became a Ranger?
So let's get some terminology. So there is a big part of the Army that considers if you went to Ranger school and you have a Ranger tab, you're a Ranger. And if you go to a unit that is not a Ranger unit and you have a Ranger tab, they'll call you Ranger. They'll call you out. They expect a higher standard from you because you've been through this school, and they expect better things of you than other people. They might from other people, and they might put you in higher leadership positions within the unit because you're a Ranger tab. And that doesn't mean you're necessarily a better soldier. It just means you were tested and you passed. Some people don't have the opportunity to go for a variety of reasons. Some people dropped out. For instance, they made it. I think it's a 10-week course now. It's gone everywhere from like 8 to 12 weeks over the last 30 years, but I think it's 10 weeks now. It takes place in Fort Benning, Georgia, Dahlonega, Georgia, and down in Florida, near Fort Walton Beach, at Eglin Air Force Base. That's the kind of the jungle phase is what they call it, or the swamp phase. And then the mountain phase is in Dahlonega, the mountains of Dahlonega. So you learn how to rappel, you learn how to do tactics, you learn boat operations, like small boat operations, going rowing and with small offboard motors and stuff like that. And you conduct raids they have bad guys with guns, lasers and stuff like that. So we do op 4 enemy, kind of fake enemies that will fight you and stuff like that. So you go through the course. Anywhere in the rest of the Army, you're considered a premier leader if you got a Ranger tab, and there's higher expectations from you. Okay. And that's fine. People call these people Rangers all the time. And the people who weren't in Ranger battalions, that's the unit, will just say, I'm just as good as you. And there's nothing wrong with that, because they're probably just as good at the Ranger school tasks as anybody else. When you go to a Ranger battalion, you don't have to have a tab go to Ranger school before you go to Ranger battalion, unless you're a senior non-commissioned officer or an officer or a warrant officer. Then you will go to so that RIP course I was talking about is called RASP now, Ranger Assessment Selection Program or something like that. And it's 8 weeks long. And the first part is 3 or 4 weeks long. And it's like it was in the past, where they're just trying to get your medal and see if you have what it takes to be a Ranger. And then the last 4 or 5 weeks is teaching you weapons, and tactics, mobility, medical, trying to give you the basic skills that every Ranger knows, so that when you get to a Ranger squad, you'll be useful, right? And you can immediately start working as a Ranger. Once again, we're talking about straight out of high school. You go to basic training. You go and usually your infantry or mortars, you're some kind of combat MOS. Then you go through this 8-week-long RASP course, and then you're in a Ranger battalion. So maybe you're 19 now, or maybe you're 18, but you have a lot of 18, 19, 20-year-olds that make up the Ranger battalions. So when you get to a squad, it's a very young squad. A squad is 9 people. There's a staff sergeant in charge of the squad. There's 2 sergeants, E5, that are team leaders that are in charge of four-man squads, or 4-man teams. So you have 2 4-man teams in a squad. So you have 4-man team, 8, and then you have the squad leader 9. And then you have a bunch of 18 to 20-year-olds that are privates and corporals. Okay. And everyone's pretty young. When I was in the Rangers, I made E6. I made staff sergeant in 4 years. So feasibly, you could join the Army of 17 and be E6 out of E9. So E is enlisted. There's 9 ranks in the enlistment, and you could be an E6 in 4 years in the Rangers, conceivably. And you got your rank pretty fast. So they're young, and they're focused on like really good infantry. And they're also doing building clearing, like taking down buildings, rescuing hostages, down pilots. If you ever seen Black Hawk Down, those are mostly Rangers and some Delta Force mixed in with them. But that's what they do. So they're broken down into teams, squads. A platoon has about 30 people. It has 4 squads, 3 9-man squads, and a weapon squad, which is machine guns. And then 4 platoons, or in a company has about 200 people. Now, a company is run by a captain and a first sergeant who's a E8. Okay. So if you get an idea of like, this is a 200-man company's run by a captain and a first sergeant, an E8, let's just go over to what a Green Beret team looks like. A Green Beret has 4 E6s. That's the minimum rank for a Green Beret on a team. They may come out of the course in E5, but they're quickly promoted to E6 within a year usually. So the lowest rank on a team in a Green Beret of a 12-man team is an E6, which is, like I said, in the Rangers, there's one there's a squad leader and there's 4 of them in a platoon of 30 people. So you have 4 E6s, you have 5 E7s, you have an E8. So in E8 is a master sergeant, or is equivalent to the first sergeant in the company of 200. And then you have a captain in charge of this team. So that's the maturity and experience behind this, right? You have a 12-man team with a lot of people that are late 20s, 30s. You'll probably, even the youngest guy, it takes 2 years to get through the qualification course to be a Green Beret, as opposed to 8 weeks in the Rangers. So you're obviously going to have 21, 22-year-olds coming there and not 18, 19-year-olds. So they're already going to have that on them. And they got 2 years of training as well. And then when they get there,
I was going to say, is that 2 years continuous, or is it you go out and do other stuff and you come back in? Or
so if you
orders
come
of
out of
magnitude?
if you come out of high school, you're basically spending almost 3 years before you actually get to a unit, because you got to go to airborne, you got to go to basic training, you got to go to your infantry training, you got to go to airborne training. Then you have to go to a pre-Green Beret training physical course, because you're not physically ready to even try out for the course as a high school graduate at a basic training. So you go to a 6-week prep course, then you go to a 3-week like physical fitness, mental challenge to see if you're the right guy. And then you're going to go through 18 months to 2 years of training to be a Green Beret, which includes language, small unit tactics, POW training, and like a final exercise. And then your MOS, which is anywhere from usually around a year, which is your communications, medical, weapons and tactics, or engineer and demolition expert. So you go through those, and each one of those is like a year long. So
What does MOS stand for?
Mission Occupational Specialty. It's basically your profession in the military. I'm sorry, not mission, military occupational specialty. It's your profession that you choose. If you're a truck driver, you have a number and a letter that corresponds with that. I don't know what it is. So all Green Berets are 18 is the number, and they may be an A, a B, C, D, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo, Foxtrot, and then if in a Zulu. And if you're an X-ray, that means you came in as a high school, or you came in as a civilian and went straight into the Green Beret program, but you haven't gone and graduated yet. So you don't have a profession yet.
So from just the amount of training that one needs to do and the amount of time that it takes, I'm guessing there are fewer Green Berets than Rangers.
That's not true. There's only there's 3 Ranger units. All right. And like I said, as a private, you won't have Ranger school yet. You usually don't go to Ranger school till like you have 2 years in the Ranger unit, unless you're an NCO or like a E6 or above, or you're an officer. You'll go straight to Ranger school after you go through the RASP program. But so to be in the Ranger unit, you have to go through RASP. Everyone there may be lawyers, there may be chaplains, there may be paper pushers in the personnel department. They may be all these professions that make a unit work, but everyone in the unit goes through RASP to prove that they're all at the same level, physically, mentally. They're ready to go, and they're ready there's a really good scene, and I don't know if it's true, in Black Hawk Down, where this guy's doing personnel. He's a personnel guy. He's doing paperwork in Somalia, and then they need people to go rescue the downed pilot and stuff. And he has a cast on. That's why he was putting that thing. And he just takes the cast off. Is like, I'm ready to go. But basically, all the people that are doing all these non-combat jobs, they're all trained in weapons. They're all ready to go, and they all volunteer the Rangers to be a part of the solution. So that's the difference between Rangers and Green Berets. All the Green Berets go through these training, and the unit, the Green Beret unit, the Special Forces unit, is oriented to making those guys get where they need to do and do what they need to do. But there is a boatload of people behind the scenes that didn't go through any assessment. They're just normal Army career people. They're paper pushers, or they're chaplain assistants, or there's even a couple medics that aren't Green Berets. And their job is to make the Green Berets, to get the Green Berets trained up and moved out to where they need to work. But they didn't go through any assessment. They're just normal Army people. And after 2 or 3 years, they may go to a normal Army unit after leaving the Green Beret unit. In the Ranger unit, everyone has been assessed that they are at the same mental and physical level to be a Ranger. So that's different. And so a Ranger unit has 3 companies of about 200 people each. So that's a Ranger Battalion. There's 3 Ranger Battalions. So a Ranger Battalion has 3 companies, 600 each, and a headquarters company that has, let's say, another 200. It's probably not that many. So let's say each Ranger Battalion has 800. There's 3 of them. There's 2,400 Rangers in the Ranger unit. And then there's another headquarters element on top of that. So let's just round it up to maybe 3,000. All right. Let's say there's 3,000 Rangers. And like I said, most of those are really young people. Now, the Green Berets have 5 active units and 2 National Guard units. Each active unit has 4 battalions. Each battalion has 3 companies. So each company has about Green Berets in it. So 4 companies, that's almost 300. And then times the 4 battalions is, I don't know, I'm losing my numbers, but I'd say there's probably 15, like somewhere between 1,000 Green Berets in each Green Beret group. So you got probably 7,000 Green Berets running around.
All right. So even though it takes longer, there are more of them because the Army wants to have more of these active units than they do. Do Rangers go on to become Green Berets? Is that a common path, or is that not so common?
It is, because the Rangers are ultimately they're combat guys. And so when they go up in ranks, it's a pyramid, and like any business, right? And so when you get up to be a squad leader, there's only 1 squad leader per every, not 10 guys or something like that. And then when you get up to be a platoon sergeant, there's only 1 platoon sergeant for every like 50 guys. A platoon has 30 people, but there's a bunch of other Rangers running around doing other stuff too. So you have probably one platoon sergeant is an E7 for every 40 or 50 guys in the Ranger Battalion. But where do the other people go when they want to get promoted? They have to go outside the Rangers and go into another infantry unit probably. Also, or they become drill sergeants, or they become recruiters or something like that, right? Or instructors at the Ranger course. But if you look at what the rank structure of the Green Beret team is, I got 5 E7s. So almost every single Green Beret, I've never met a Green Beret that did not get promoted to platoon sergeant level within 10 years, less than that usually. And so there's so much more opportunity to get to the E7 rank. And then there's 1 E8 for every 10 or 12 people. Every 10 or 12 Green Berets is a first sergeant. In the Rangers, that guy's in charge of 200 people, and it took him a while to get there. In the Green Berets, every 1/10 or 1/12 of the people in the Green Berets is an E8.
What's the E9? How do you get to that? That's the top level for enlisted, you said?
That's the top level, but so we're talking like 1 out of every 100 Green Berets, maybe about every 100, 120 is a sergeant major, is E9. And then when you look at the only sergeant major in a Ranger battalion is the sergeant major of the battalion of the 750 guys, right? So once again, but what happens is the people who are vying for the next level in 7 and 8, they need to go outside the Rangers because there's only so many slots, and they're considered the elite of their MOS. So the Army promotes within their MOS. Every year they look at like, okay, how many infantry people are in the Army? All right, how many open positions are there for E5, E6, E7, E8? And then they say, okay, we have 5 throughout the Army in the infantry, of which the Rangers is a small part of. We have a bunch of E7 and E8 positions. So we can promote the E6s to E7. We can promote 5,000 to E7, and we can promote 600 to E8. Well, there's not that many places in the Rangers for those rank positions. And the Rangers are the best of the best. They have incredible evaluation reports. They've been to combat more than most of the infantry have. They've done all kinds of schools and specialty training. And so they get promoted faster than most of the other infantry or combat units out there. And so therefore you have a bunch of Rangers with no place to go within the Ranger regiment because there's not enough space. So they have to go out, but they're so used to being elite that some of them don't want to go to a normal unit. So then they make a decision of whether they want to go to, say, Delta Force, of which, once again, that's a super hard course. Not too many people make it through, or Green Berets, which is not as hard. They're both like 2-year courses, though. Once you get through the assessment and selection phase, you're in training mode for 18 to 24 months in both cases. And then you can serve there at your higher ranks. There's a lot more positions for you.
Just briefly, since you've mentioned it a couple times now, Delta Force, how does that compare to Green Beret? It's still an Army program?
It is still in the Army, but they take volunteers from other services.
Okay.
So, and they're I don't think anyone would consider not the elite of the elite. I don't know how many operators there are, to tell you the truth. Probably as many as pass is probably the answer they would give. But they, you can read any books about them if you want, but they're considered the elite. They have the most money. They get the best training. They get taken care of the best. Going back to your question though, so the Rangers go to Green Berets. That's why they do it, because there's no place for else for them to go. Do Green Berets go to Rangers? Sometimes, because there's only so many people are getting promoted to E8 in the Green Berets too. And there's only so many, some people just don't want to do administrative jobs, or some people really want to go to combat, and the Rangers go to combat in a different way than the Green Berets do. And so maybe as an E8 or even an E9, you would prefer to go back to the Rangers and be a medic over there in charge of their medical facility or something like that. It's actually really hard for Green Berets to go anywhere that is not a Green Beret slot, because there's not enough Green Berets to fill the slots right now. But I've heard of Green Berets going, I've heard of one, I think, that turned their tab in and then went and said, I want to be in the Rangers.
So you've obviously thought over the years about the relative likelihood of getting promoted from what you've just described, figuring out, okay, my chances are not so good here, better here. And then later in your career, when you went and worked in the embassy, that was also a path to promotion, as I've heard you describe it. Did you figure that out in advance? Did you figure it out along the way? Is it only in hindsight, looking back, that you say, oh, that worked out because? And maybe just for my benefit and listeners, just briefly take us through, where were you at? How did your progression work over the 30 years? Did you start out and go right into the Rangers? How long were you there before you decided, oh, I got to get this Green Beret thing? So what was Randy's path through these different options? And you can make it sound like you knew what you were doing in hindsight.
No, I didn't know at all. In fact, I got promoted pretty slow compared to my peers because of some decisions I made. But I volunteered to go to the Rangers because I couldn't go in I didn't know what the Green Berets were when I joined, to tell you the truth. So, but Rangers seemed like I wanted adventure. That's why I joined the Army. I didn't get a bonus or anything. Now they get pretty good bonuses. They'll probably give you a $20,000 bonus if you sign up and make it through the Ranger. And they had the same thing for the Green Berets, to tell you the truth. But I didn't get a bonus for that either. So I went in the Rangers for 4 years. I did the Rangers. I went to combat in Panama Operation Just Cause, jumped into Panama, Rio Hato in 89. And then I just decided that my future here, if I stayed here, was going to be very similar to what I've been doing for 3 years. And I decided I wanted to do something different. And there's recruiters for Green Berets and all these bases. And so I went and talked to one and I started going down that road. It was funny because they treat you differently when you decide you're going to leave. You're looked at like as a traitor because you're not going to stay in the Ranger community anymore, which is silly because once again, you can only stay there so long because they would prefer that they kicked you out rather than you left on your own terms is the thing. So I left, I went to the course. Fortunately, I passed. And then I was promoted. I was an E7 in 7 years, which is very uncommon in the military, not so uncommon in the Green Berets, but it's also a little higher than most people do. And then I stayed in E7 for like a long time, like probably like over 10 years. I stayed in E7. And some people say it was because I didn't have a specific school that was required, which is Jump Master. But I don't know if that's true or not. It seemed to be true because I didn't see anybody else without Jump Master who were getting promoted. But I had better things to do, more important things to do to go to Jump Master. It wasn't a goal of mine. A lot of people, that's their goal to become a Jump Master. Wasn't my goal. And so I ended up getting the course a lot later in my career than a lot of my peers. And my peers got promoted faster than I did. But once I got to the next level, the E8, I made E9 really quickly. 4 years, I think. I was promoted to E9. So, and then I was
And
an
so
E.
most of your time was in a Green Beret unit, Randy?
Yeah, almost all of it. Just those first 4 years in the Rangers. And then I went to the Green Beret course in 91 and graduated in 92. And then I was a Green Beret from 92 till my end of my career, which was 2019. So I did pretty much my whole career as a Green Beret. Then I did go outside of the groups. The groups are the combat units, basically. And the jobs outside of that are usually administrative jobs. So I had 2 administrative jobs when I was in E8 and E9, one in Colombia and one in Italy, where I was doing more administrative stuff than combat stuff.
So this talk of jump masters makes me think of something. You have done a tremendous number of jumps yourself. Combat jumps are all, I had thought that was somehow related to the Rangers, but only because I heard the phrase in airborne Rangers. Are all Rangers jump qualified or are all Green Berets jump qualified? How do we think about that?
Yeah. So you have to go to jump school to be a Ranger unit.
Yes.
To go to Ranger Tab, you don't have to be an airborne guy. You don't have to jump out of airplanes. But to be in a Ranger unit, you have to volunteer. So they always call you in the Rangers a 3-time volunteer. You volunteer to join the Army, you volunteer to jump out of airplanes, you volunteer to be a Ranger. Three-time volunteer. And the SF, it's similar. You have to be airborne qualified to be a Green Beret as well. In fact, nowadays, you're what's called Halo qualified, military free fall. So there's different kinds of jumps. You could jump with a static line at 1,200 feet and they throw you out as fast as they can out of the back of an airplane. Your chute is connected to a cable in the plane and it pulls automatically. It's a 15-foot tether. And then it's when you get to the 15-foot mark, which happens within 4 seconds, it pulls your chute automatically and then you drift to the ground. And that's the reason for that is it's called mass tack. You're trying to get as many people to the ground as you can, not getting shot at like they did in World War II or Just Cause in Panama. And then the Halo is like people doing civilian stuff. You jump out at a lot higher altitude. It's a different chute. It's more controllable. You can usually glide a couple miles from where you were let off of the plane under radar, depending on that stuff. So nowadays, when I went through, it wasn't mandatory, but now it's mandatory unless they changed it recently. Everyone is free fall qualified coming out of the Q course as well.
What's the difference between all of the jump qualifications that you just described and jump master? What is that on top?
So a jump master means that you'll be in charge of like a plane of jumpers. And so you'll be making sure they get the pre-training, which is familiarization about how you're supposed to land and what the drop zone looks like and the direction of the plane and all that stuff. Then when you're checking all their equipment, you're not checking each one, but you're one of the primary people that's checking all their equipment to make sure it's put on correctly. Then you're putting them in the plane. you're inspecting the plane, then you're spotting the location to jump, which means the pilot's going to tell you when you're getting close to the drop zone. And then if you're jumping out of a side door, you'll open that door. If you're jumping out of the ramp, they'll lower the ramp. And then you're sticking your head out. If you grab like this, you'll fly out because this is the back of the airplane, right? So you have to grab like this, the door. I've seen people get excited and go, okay, and then they just go flying out. But the idea is that you got like this, you're holding it in, you stick your head all the way out and you're looking to find the drop zone and see what you get that you've already done a map check. So you say, okay, when we pass this river, we got 1 minute. And then you're going to tell everyone, okay, or when we pass this river, we got 10 minutes. And then when we pass this road, we got 6 minutes. And at 6 minutes, you're going to tell everyone you got 6 minutes and they're going to start doing their procedures to get hooked up to the cable and get ready. And you're going to give them all those commands. And then when they get ready, they're going to check each other's equipment and they're going to say, we're all ready. And then you're going to check again. And then you're going to go by the final checkpoint. And then you're going to start pushing people out, or you're going to, depending on what's going to happen, you may jump out first. You're like, follow me. And then they follow you out, depending if you do the ramp or the door and everything like that. So you're responsible for everybody and everything that's going on in that jump, and you can't sleep. And that's why I never wanted to do it. I'm a lazy guy. And so basically everyone else is sleeping until 6 minutes, but you're paying attention and you're engaged with everything. And everyone else is also turned on, but they can rest and relax for the prep and the tree and when you're in the plane for the hour ride and everything, there's nothing to do, but you're always turned on and responsible for everything. And I just wasn't interested in not sleeping. So I didn't, but it affected my career. It was a requirement. I didn't realize it was a requirement for a long time. And then it turned out it was. As soon as I went to the school, I got promoted the next list.
All right. So that's going to lead to how we should probably wrap this up. But I think if the question was, what's the difference between Rangers and Green Beret, you've done some great work clarifying. And I feel like I understand better both the Ranger School, the Ranger units, the Green Berets, Special Forces, and what are some of the differences of how those look, how you get qualified, and what your life is like once you're in. Now I'll ask you to consider two questions, Randy, and they would be, you maybe touched on one of them. Any things that you would advise people to avoid, mistakes to watch out for on the passionately wrong side of things? And then maybe more positively to end, what advice would you give to people who are either in the military early on in their careers or considering joining the military and are evaluating what would be a fruitful path for them to consider going? And I know there's not a one size fits all answer, but nonetheless, mistakes and advice. Let's hear your thoughts.
So it's passionately wrong. I think we haven't touched on this, and I'll touch on it quickly, is they got two very different missions. All right. The Rangers are what we call door kickers. They do raids. They focus on combat 100%. That's their job. Their job is to go capture bad guys, attack bad guys' compounds, rescue hostages if necessary, and capture bad guys if possible and kill them if that's the goal. And that's their job, is to do that. And they do it very well, and they're super well trained and they're super fit. And that's awesome. When I was in the Rangers, every day was a test. Every day was a fitness, physical and mental test of your abilities to want to be there. It was while you were there, you're like, I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. And when you leave, you're like, why isn't everyone else turned on every day, 24 hours a day? And it's just a different feeling. Now, Green Berets, they can do combat, but there's a difference between 200 Rangers attacking a compound that work together all the time and all have similar standard operation procedures and things like that. And a 12-man team, they're doing the same thing. Obviously, a 12-man team can't take down the same amount of area that a 200-man unit can. And it's not, you can't just say, well, we'll just put 10 teams together and they'll all work great together, because you have 10 different commanders. You have 10 different captains. It's not as fluid as that, because we don't work together like that very much. There is one unit per group that kind of does that, but they only have like 50 people. So they don't have 200 people. So you gotta, when generals and colonels are assessing, like, who are we going to use to do this? oh, we have this huge compound where Saddam Hussein is, and he's got 200 guys guarding him. We're not going to send a bunch of Green Berets because that's not what they do. That's not their primary objective. They're going to send Delta Force combined with Rangers, things like that. So what do we do good? Well, one of the things we do is unconventional warfare, where we go into a country that we disagree with, and we try to take it over from the inside using guerrillas. And so the best example ever is Afghanistan. We sent 100 Green Berets. We sent 8 to 10 teams of Green Berets in there. They linked up with the Northern Alliance. They were trained to call in fire from planes and to train the troops, and they were sent supplies to give to the Northern Alliance. And in 90 days, we took over Afghanistan with 100 guys on the ground. So that's their meat and potatoes. That's what they do. Now, when we're not at war, because that didn't happen like every week, obviously. So what do we do the rest of the time? They send us to various countries like Colombia. My unit was in South America. They sent us to like Colombia, who was fighting the FARC for 50 years. And we helped train their troops in counterinsurgency. So teaching them what to look for again for the FARC, how to do ambushes correctly and raids on the FARC locations, how to do airborne and air mobile operations and things like that. And that's what we do the other part of the time. We can do direct action. There's been teams that have been in the right place at the right time. Like, hey, we know there's a person there. They got 3 guys guarding them. Get those hostages because you're closest and it's very timely. And we can't get Delta Force there or something like that. That's happened before. And they're more than qualified to do that. It's just, they don't usually train outside their team. The team level is the training team. And so therefore, anything that requires more than 10 or 12 guys, usually you're not going to call these guys to do it. They just don't train like in larger numbers like that. So that's probably the patently wrong thing is you see the movies. George Clooney has been a Green Beret at least 3 times in movies. And he's usually by himself. He's like, I'm a colonel and I can do everything. And so the reality is most officers only spend like 3 years on a team at max. And then they go on and do staff jobs. I spent 10 or 12 years on a team. So most officers aren't sniper qualified. And yet continuously you have officers in books and movies doing the sniper mission. But most of the time, the sniper mission, it goes to an enlisted guy because that's the guy who's been shooting the sniper rifle for the last 10 years and he has the most experience. And so it's interesting how that works, but that's the difference in the missions. And then if the other question was, if you're interested in being a Green Beret or a Ranger, which one should you do first and how should you prepare for it? And I think we've talked about this. My career in the military, the successes I've done I've attributed to my ability to run. And so if you don't know anything else about the military, if you can run, and obviously if you have upper body strength, that's going to help you too. So push-ups, climbing ropes, pull-ups, that's going to put you at an advantage. When you join the military, and especially when you join with a contract to go to the Rangers or Green Berets, most of the time they're going to give you a training program. Also online, you can find training programs from the units themselves. Like if you want to come to this unit, this is a good training program, and those are completely free. And you can find all that kind of stuff. There's books out there, obviously, for all this stuff. But most of it is heart, it's mind, and then it's, being able to move that quickly over long distances with and without backpacks. Most of the obstacle courses have rope climbs, which tend to get people because they just can't figure out how to climb a rope. So I would say if you want to do any of this stuff, I would practice climbing ropes. And you have to be able to pass the physical fitness test. So push-ups and stuff like that are always going to be helpful, but you'll get that in basic training. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. The more fit you are, there's nothing easy about either one of these, but the more fit you are, the more likely you are to pass and the less painful it will be, hopefully. But it's all painful for pretty much everybody.
So I guess besides understanding the missions and how they're different in terms of once you're in, which way you might go, this basic, what'd you call it, heart, mind, and then the physical aspect of it, you should be honest about whether it's something you want to put yourself through the pain and effort for, huh? So just to relativize it, the couple thousand in the Ranger unit, maybe 5, 6, 7,000, whatever in the Green Berets, 10,000 between the two of them. And there's some other special forces we'll talk about on other episodes, or special operations rather, sorry. But I guess the rest of the military is much bigger, right? A lot of people never will serve in one of these units, and they seem to be fine with that, right? So a little bit of, I imagine there's some self-selection going on where people say, it's just not for me. I can get through the basic training, but after that, I don't want to have to make I assume the physical training is that much more intense if you're in one of these units, right? You never can let your guard down. Or is that correct? Or if you're in any military job, you're going to be, yeah, the standards have to be higher, right? You were referring earlier to the Rangers being super fit all the time.
I'd say most of the combat units, especially infantry, are more physically fit than other jobs in the military, just because they put that as a high priority and they're doing PT pretty much every day. The combat units do physical training every day. Other MOSs and other units that aren't combat may do it 3 times a week and like twice on your own. And we'll have physical training that's led by your supervisors 3 times a week, stuff like that. A little bit more lenient, but I don't know any combat, especially infantry units that aren't doing physical training every day with their guys. Now, it may not be running every day. They may be doing martial arts. They may be doing obstacle course. They may do swimming. They may do once in a while, they may play basketball instead of doing something harder, take a break. The military has worked really hard to get a good physical training program that doesn't hurt their people. That I used to, for the first 15 years of the military, we ran every day we were working, we ran, and there's nothing wrong with that, except if you don't stretch and you don't make aware that some people have injuries and maybe they shouldn't run that day, which I'm not sure the Army's really good at sometimes. But for 15 years, I ran every day between 2 and 5 miles and sometimes longer. And that was the way of the world back then. I think it's changed a lot. I think the standards have changed. Like when I came in order to max the run time, you had to run an 11:30 miles, which is pretty fast. It's not like track star or high school track star fast, but it's pretty fast. And nowadays, I think it's lowered to like 14 minutes. So they knocked off 2.5 minutes from that as the max stuff. I don't know why. But so anyway, that's the deal.
You're making me feel bad about the times I bragged about doing a running streak, 3 months, 5 months, 8 months. If you really ran that often every day for 15 years, that is one hell of a running streak. Gosh.
I did. And I didn't start running marathons until I'd been in the Army for about 5 years. And when I did, I just said, I'm going to run a marathon today. And like next week, oh, there's a marathon in Houston next week. I'm going to go run it. And my girlfriend was like, you have to train for that. I was like, I feel like I've been training my whole life for this. I'd never run over like 6 miles in my life, but I felt good at the end of 6 miles. Like, I'll tell you what, I'll go run 10 miles tomorrow. I feel good. Then I'll run the marathon next weekend. So I ran 10 miles. I was like, yeah, I'm good. So I ran don't get me wrong. The 26 miles was different than the 10 miles. And at the end, I couldn't walk forward for a week. I had to walk backwards, but I did it. We talked about this. I did it under 4 hours. I didn't really do any specific training for it or anything.
Yeah. So I guess if you want to gain and maintain a certain level of fitness, these Army infantry related jobs are certainly not the worst thing that you could do, huh? And what's also interesting, Randy, I don't know if it is a result of selection bias, so the people who come on and talk about it are happy, but everyone who we've talked to, colleagues of yours and people that you know who's been involved in the military, has spoken extremely highly of it, that it has been a good career choice, very meaningful to them. And from that perspective, I think you being able to give us these inside details about some practical stuff about how it works and what it means is helpful for people who might be on the fence about, is this a good potential career path for me? So from that perspective, I think it's useful. I hope to listeners as well.
I think my last 2-minute marketing for either of those units, it's come a long way since I went there. The equipment's a lot better. They have trainers now. When I got to either one of these units, there was a gym with some equipment, but it wasn't fantastic. Now they got state-of-the-art equipment. They have hired trainers that used to work at NFL football training for real teams or UFC trainers and stuff like that. So they actually have real honest to God trainers that they've hired away from these places to train our elite units. They have nutritionists. They have physical therapists that work with you every day on whatever your problem is. And they all talk together and say, all right, this guy can't do this move, so you need to think of a different move so he can still work his shoulders or something until this problem goes away. So there are really great benefits for being in these units now, especially, not to mention they all get special duty pay above and beyond what normal infantry does. So it can be worth your while if that's what you want to do. If you ever wondered what it felt like to be a professional athlete, nowadays in these units, you're treated like a professional athlete. You have all these specialists that are there to help you be the best that you can be.
Well, I don't think we can end any better than that, Randy. So thanks everyone for watching and listening. And we hope you found this interesting. Randy and I are planning to continue this series of comparing different things, not just in the military, by the way. And if you have suggestions for what you'd like to hear us compare, let us know, and we'll see if we have something to say about that. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thanks, guys.
We'd love to hear what you think, so please comment on the show with your thoughts. We read all of your comments.
Thanks for joining us, and thanks for subscribing. See you next time.